The Democratic House impeachment managers are expected to wrap up their case today against former President Trump. Yesterday, they presented for nearly 8 hours, going through footage of the January 6th riot and Trump's speeches in the weeks leading up to it. Tomorrow, Trump's defense team will have its turn as both sides get a total of 16 hours to make their arguments. Joining me now to talk about some of the highlights from the Democratic Party's case against the president and what we might expect from the Trump defense team is Abigail Robertson, the Capitol Hill correspondent for CBN News. Abigail, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, let's start with your impressions so far of the presentations made by the Democratic House impeachment managers.
Well, the House impeachment managers are certainly playing the emotion card. And while some Republican senators have admitted that, as they've played these videos from the horrific attack on January 6th, they've been led to tears, it is still unlikely that this is going to end in a conviction because many Republican senators do not believe this impeachment trial is constitutional. And we saw that at the beginning of this week when 44 Republican senators voted on the very first thing they considered is proceeding to this impeachment trial of a president who is no longer office constitutional. And while it just needed a simple majority, which they had, so it proceeded, 44 Republicans argued that it is not. And Democrats would need 17 Republicans and every Democrat senator to get that two-thirds majority to convict President Trump at the end of this trial. And right now, it looks like they are far from that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Abigail. And here's where I also think the emotions, and I've seen this, some of the senators even tearing up, because here's what happened. They had a very limited perspective of what happened in January the 6th. They were rushed out. They went into a room. They were kept safe. And now they're getting to see a 360 view of what happened. And I can relate to that. I mean, we had actually here at our place in Washington, D.C., we had the first successfully prosecuted domestic terrorist case here when an LGBTQ activist came in and shot one of our people and tried to shoot up our building. Well, when we went back and we looked at the footage that was captured on the security footage, I mean, it was emotional for the team because, we only saw what we saw on that day and it was very limited. But then when you look at all of it, it's very emotional for these men, but that does not, men and women, but it doesn't mean that it changes the facts.
Yes, and you're exactly correct about that. Remember, these senators and congressmen, for the most part, were hunkered down in the Capitol. And while they knew that there was a breach on the Capitol building, as you said, they weren't seeing what the U.S. Capitol Police was going through on the front lines. And, just as a Christian, I've watched almost this entire impeachment trial, and just taking the politics aside, what has been just so interesting to me is as the House impeachment managers are showing these videos and laying out the chronological timeline, in my view, what I am seeing is just how I feel like God had his hand of protection on the Capitol that day. It is truly remarkable while I know there was tragic loss of life, including one Capitol police officer, to me, it is remarkable that there was not more tragedy that day. And when you see the video, the timeline of Officer Eugene Goodman, who was one-on-one, or one-on-many, I should say, with that mob that was heading up to the Senate chamber while Vice President Mike Pence was still inside the Senate chamber. Because he took them away from the door, which was still open. I mean, it was literally a matter of 1 or 2 minutes that they were able to get the vice president out and secure the door, or that mob would have been in the chamber, could have been in the chamber while the vice president was still there. And when you walk through this timeline, to me, I just see so many moments of different decisions that people were making, where had they turned left and not right, they would have been gone straight into a mob. And when you see Senator Mitt Romney, and again, it was Officer Eugene Goodman who came running down the hall and told Senator Romney to turn around because he was heading straight into where people were. And I don't think they would have treated Senator Romney very, very kindly had they found him. To me, I've just been very, it's just been remarkable to me to see how many miracles I feel like God really performed that day that we might not realize.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think that's an important point because what we saw on January the 6th, from my perspective, I was actually in a meeting with the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, when it unfolded. I was not at the Capitol. I was at the State Department. But looking back on, or looking at the footage, looking at the information, pure evil. This is evil.
Yeah.
It is the manifestation of lawlessness that has been at work in our country for a long time. So I'm very troubled about what this means for our country and the ability it gives our opponents around the world, the ability to criticize us, because quite frankly, we're losing the moral foundation that keeps us together, because we're a nation of law, a nation of rules. We're ruled by law, and self-government is critical to this. And what we saw on January the 6th was anything but self-government. It was a mob. It was a riot. But one thing I want to take umbrage to, and in fact forcefully speak to this, is how people are claiming that these individuals who, clearly some of them supported Donald Trump, but that this is evangelicals. This is not evangelicals. These are lawless criminals who took matters into their own hands, that just like those in Portland, Seattle, that we've denounced that lawlessness, we denounce this lawlessness as well.
Yes, I totally agree.
Let's talk now very quickly. What do you anticipate from the Trump defense team? I mean, as you said, the Democratic managers playing very heavily upon the emotions, painting these pictures, trying to connect Donald Trump to this, that he somehow is responsible for it. What do you think the defense team will do?
Well, the defense team is going to make the case that while what happened was terrible, they don't think that you can convict President Trump for inciting the riot. And they're going to argue that his speech was protected by the First Amendment. And that they're also going to point to the fact that the FBI and law enforcement were aware that there was a very credible threat on the Capitol days before this event. They're going to show that shows that these people had planned this riot long before President Trump ever started speaking on January 6th. And they're really going to make that First Amendment argument. And they've even in the first time we heard them on Tuesday, they said they are not arguing that or defending what happened on January 6th. They agree with the House impeachment managers that was a horrible event. But what they are going to defend is that President Trump is not responsible, as impeachment managers are charging him.
Well, and I'm sure some of the facts that will come out, because I had on my program here, I think it was on January the 18th, I had the former Secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, who showed that he had offered to the District of Columbia and to the Capitol, reinforcements. They didn't have specifics, but they knew there could be trouble, and so they offered additional help, which was turned down. So the administration was taking the actions necessary to provide the safety. Now, Abigail, I wonder if the defense team will also point to some of the things that have been said by, like, Maxine Waters. Bobby, do we have that clip of Maxine Waters handy? Let me play this clip.
And so let's stay the course. Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And then, of course, you had, I think we got a clip of Chuck Schumer as well after our Supreme Court decision. We got that clip of Senator Schumer?
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
So, I mean, is that insightful speech?
Oh, I think we can count on them playing those videos and probably a few others, and also just showing videos of a lot of the violence that we saw play out this summer. And, I heard Senator Josh Hawley today on Fox News, and he was talking about how, I believe it was the night before the Capitol riot, there were protesters outside his home in Northern Virginia where his wife was home alone with her newborn baby. And there were protesters outside pounding on the door, chanting, calling for Senator Hawley to come out. And Senator Hawley was not even there. And he said today on Fox that he has not heard one Democrat condemning those actions. And I think that is going to be a key part of President Trump's defense, is showing that, there are many cases of other politicians also possibly inciting violence and calling for violence. And are they going to be charged as well?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it will be part of the defense. Abigail Robertson, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate what CBN News does.
Thank you.